So today we're talking about ELDs. And to be clear right from the beginning, this is my experience and this is how I uh, I use my ELD. The buttons I push, the times. This is how I did it. If your company instructs you to do it a certain way, then by all means, absolutely follow your company. One bit of advice: do not get into conversations with your safety director on every little minutia on how you should do your logbook. Do your logbook, and if nobody calls you or says, "Hey, this is wrong. You cannot do it this way," then you're doing it the right way. So a logbook is a legal binding document. That's why you sign it, and the company, in essence, co-signs with you. So the company cannot tell you this is how you can do it, this is a shortcut, or anything of that nature. They have their guidelines that they have to go by, and you as a driver perform your logbook the best way you know how. So with that in mind, this is the way a typical day that I would use my logbook. My company used a service called PeopleNet, and that's what comes up on your tablet that you interact with all day. You do your log, you get your loads, you might have a GPS, you probably have 3 or 4 other things on there that tell you information. But today we're just going to talk about the logbook. I do want to say that the first thing you do in the morning is a pre-trip inspection, and that is what kicks off your 14-hour clock. Let's say you start at 6 a.m. to use an example. You do your pre-trip, and that should take about 15 minutes. Once you do your pre-trip, then you're ready to go drive it. Now, as you drive along, you must drive at least 2 hours, but not more than 8 hours. And somewhere in there, you're going to need to, you're going to need to take a 30-minute break. If you can time your fuel or other things that you're already going to do within that 30 minutes, then you're just accomplishing several things at once. So getting back to my example, so at 6:15 I'm taking off. I'm driving down the road for, let's say, 3 hours, and let's go ahead and get some fuel. Okay, now this is where it's important. Your logbook and on these trucks will, as long as you don't go over a certain speed limit, I think it's like 10 or 15 miles an hour, whatever it is, you can reach up there and hit the off duty. I'm off duty. And when I pulled into a fuel, let's say I started at 6:15, drove down the road for 3 hours, and now I'm going to pull in and go ahead and get some fuel. The minute I get off the main road and pull into the parking lot, and I'm only going to be doing about 5 miles an hour, please, no speeding in the fuel stop parking lot. So I'm only doing about 5 miles an hour. The minute I hit that parking lot, I reach up there and hit the off duty. Now, what we're striving for is to maximize our driving time. If we're out on the road away from our family, we want the maximum driving time. I got paid by the mile, and so if I wasted a bunch of hours on duty not driving, where now I can't drive because I've used up all that time, then I'm not gaining anything. I'm not getting paid for that off-duty not driving time. The only thing I was getting paid for is driving, tarping, and occasionally detention pay if I had to stay somewhere very long. Now, there are some places you say, well, you can't do that. Okay, another thing, when I pulled in to get unloaded, again, the minute I hit that parking lot, I went off duty. Now, not all companies, but some, mine did. I did not touch anything. In fact, they would, in some places, they would unhook my trailer and unload me. So I was not on duty, not driving. I was not on duty at all. I wasn't doing anything. And so that is something that if it ever came up, which for me it never did, and I've never heard of it coming up. I've never heard of a police officer pulling you over and questioning you about your logs. It's just not a thing. They don't really worry about it, and neither should you. Now, the purpose of the logs initially was to protect drivers from unscrupulous employers who were trying to make you go out there and drive 18 hours a day or something like that. So the spirit of the logbook is to protect the driver. So you can only drive 11 hours a day within a 14-hour period. And in my example, I started at 6. That means by 8 o'clock at night, that night, no matter what's going on, I've got to clock out. No more driving, no more anything. So using my example, starting at 6 o'clock, come 8 o'clock at night, that's it. You're done. That's your 14 hours. And so you want to maximize your driving time in there. And the saving and only counting your time as driving time as best you can as you go down the road. You may have, another load where you need to get to somewhere, so you want the maximum amount of driving time available. And the easiest way to do that is if you're not actively driving, then you're off duty. If you have to do certain things on duty, nobody is ever going to question or look whether it takes you 15 minutes to get unloaded or 3 hours. Who knows? But if you have to put something on there, then put the very bare minimum of, yes, I unloaded, I'm on duty, not driving, I unloaded in 15 minutes, and now I'm back to driving. So I've seen drivers really want to fight people over that, oh, I don't want to get into trouble and I want to mark everything exactly the way it is supposed to be. And God love you. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting to anybody to do it one way or the other. I'm telling you how I did it. And so as you go along through your day, fuel, now you need to kind of be careful about fuel because that's easy to check. But again, for the most part, I've never heard of people getting, unless there's something that's happened, and then it may become an issue. But us as safe drivers, I know you are, I know I was, safely drive down the road, get down the road, maximize your driving time, and everything will go better. Another thing I will point out that's very important, if you try to drive every day, if you try to drive 11 hours every day and you drive 7 days a week, you're going to run out of hours before you run out of week. So the sweet spot is right around 8 hours of driving a day. Now, by using that metric, what you want to do is if you want to give yourself kind of a measurement, how to measure. And if you're thinking, oh, the sweet spot is about 8 hours a day, if you go a little over one day, then in the back of your mind, you kind of know, well, if I if I drive 7 days a week, I may run out of hours. And then you would run on what's called a recap, where I've got this graph back here, but it's not very big. But when you drive continuously, and an over-the-road truck driver will drive continuously 7 days a week. So as you get to the end of your 7 days, on your 8th day, then day number 1 will drop off, and you will gain that amount of hours. And if it's always around 8 hours, then you will likely not ever, you won't run out of hours terribly. But what I did, and a little story, now a real quick story, I started driving in 1988, but I did not properly use a logbook until 2017, when I went over the road officially with an official company. So I was a little confused on how the logbook worked. Now, I had been out 1 week with a driver. We took a load from South Dakota over to Virginia. It was 1,400 miles, took us 3 days. Now, I had been driving periodically while I was learning. We were switching places. And as I was switching, I would enter my credentials into the PeopleNet deal and log on, and it was starting my logbook. Now, by the time I got this training done and got back and got my own truck within this first week, I logged on. Of course, I was all rambunctious, so I took off, and I was driving 10 and a half hours a day my first 3, 4, 5 days. And what happened was I needed to be somewhere to reload on a Friday, so I would be able to drive over the weekend to go home, because I had been out, I'd gone up for their training, I'd been out for a week in a truck, and they let you go home so you can kind of organize your truck and etc. So all I wanted to do was go pick that load up on Friday and then drive home. Well, I ran out of hours on a Thursday. So I looked down on my hours available to drive, and it said 0. And I was actually kind of confused. And to be honest, in a very stupid, kind of a rookie move, honestly, like I said, I've been driving a long time, but I'd certainly never used an ELD, electronic logging device. I'd always kept paper logs, and I kept loose leaf paper logs, which means, you can kind of switch them out to whatever you need to do. I'd been hauling cattle for 12 years prior to my going over the road, and let's just say that cattle drivers do not always neatly fall into that driving 11 hours a day. I mean, I would drive 15, 16 hours a day if I had cattle on. I mean, whatever I had to do to get the cattle off. And then, of course, once I got them off, I wanted to go home. So I wasn't going to sit out on the road and wait for 10 hours before I could drive home. I'd drive them straight out to the feedlot, turn around, drive straight back. And that was it'd usually take about 24 hours or so. And I'd do that straight. That's just the way you did it. Anyway, I had told my trainer, who he had worked for TMC for 7 or 8 years, and he had come over there to Britain, was where I was, Britain Transport out of Grand Forks. I think they're still going. Anyway, I had told him, I've not ever done an electronic logbook, help me out. He didn't really show me anything, and it was one of them, I didn't know what I didn't know. So anyway, I got to Thursday and ran out of hours, and in my stupid mind, I kind of thought, well, maybe somebody at the company flips a button or pushes something or does something and fixes all this. But I didn't tell anybody. With 0 hours on my clock, I just took off driving all the way to my loading spot and got loaded. And of course, by then my dispatcher had noticed what I had done and informed the safety officer. And I will say I took a pretty good chewing out. She was not very happy. And then going forward, she told me to do a reset. So I'd do a reset right there, take 34 hours off. And then I could go home Monday and unload Monday morning. So basically my strategy, and this is my strategy that I came up with, no company or nobody told me to do this, is what I did. The minute I got into a parking lot anywhere, I went off duty. If it was going to fuel, if I was going to eat, if I was going to whatever I was going to do, if that truck came to a stop, I went off duty. And I wanted to maximize my hours to drive, and that's the way I did it. I also learned later on that you don't want to try to drive 10 and 11 hours every day because you will quickly run out of hours. You want to drive around 8 hours a day, and then you can kind of monitor. If you go a little over 8 hours a day, then you kind of know, well, I'm getting a little bit behind, or tomorrow if I can get everything accomplished in 6 hours, and I'll kind of make up for that. And what that allowed was me to continuously drive and honestly to stay rested. I will admit that I am a fan of electronic logging. I believe that drivers should be properly rested, and my 15 months over the road from 2017 to 2020, might have been longer than 15 months, whatever. I was then extremely well rested, and this was one of the things that I wanted. I was looking forward to ELDs after 12 years of hauling cattle, and I can remember just being so god-awful tired, worn out, exhausted. And then when you get home, you're so out of whack that it takes you a day or two to regroup. So I wanted to go to a company that had ELDs where I wasn't forced to drive. Well, I don't want to say forced, where I forced myself to drive this. And for my entire time driving with this company, extremely well rested, very happy, eating on a regular schedule. Like I said in previous videos, flatbedding is normally, if the sun's up, you're doing something. But we don't do flatbedding. You very seldom, you don't do these midnight. I got an appointment at 4 o'clock in the morning. Most of the things that go on flatbeds go on them during daylight hours. And so, as I was going along, I could go to bed around 8, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock, and sleep. I didn't have to set an alarm clock. Very seldom. I might have to make a specific appointment, but for the most part, I'd get up when I'd wake up, usually around 7 o'clock, get all my personal stuff done, do my pre-trip. Now, one quick thing about starting your pre-trip, last thing, and I'll leave you with this, and I'm sure I haven't covered everything, but I'm trying to cover the spirit of the logbook, not the technicalities of it. You start getting into these technical split sleeper and all that. That is all wonderful, but I'll tell you what, you very seldom ever use it, especially as a flatbedder. Now, as a reefer and you're loading at midnight, you very well may use a split sleeper. But one of the things I was most proud of was I would tell people that I am the most well-rested truck driver you're ever going to see, and I never had any problems. I never got tired. I was never exhausted. When I did get to go home, I was pretty well rested, and generally a pretty cheerful fellow out there. And you kind of need that, because you start dealing with the with the hazards of the road and four-wheeler traffic, and trying to keep your company happy and trying to make it to a certain location on time, and do all that being groggy and not at your finest, you're going to be miserable out there. So you need to get into a system quickly with your logbook and kind of how you're going to do your driving. In other words, real quick example, you could go out, if you have a 3-day run, you could go out and knock the 2 days out, and then, just leave like 3 or 4 hours on the third day. Or you could just do your average day, where your days start to become similar, where you're kind of leading a normal life, and you're never having to rush. You're never having to race to be somewhere. You're well rested, and that's the main thing. Whatever you do, make sure that you are getting your rest, and good quality rest, and try to stay off the cigarettes as much as you can. Try to stay off the junk food, those sorts of things that really wear you down. But getting a good amount of sleep every night out on the road is critical, because you need to be at least in as top of form as you can be, and that logbook is there to protect you, and kind of there to keep you scheduled and keep everything on a fair playing field. Your company can't force you to do anything crazy, and you cannot make yourself do anything crazy. I was averaging 620 miles a day, and you can do that easy. 8.5, 9 hours in a governed truck. So it was kind of the law of the averages. Anyway, I did not want this to be a technical thing on 10 hours and recaps and all that. I just wanted to kind of tell you the main thing that I did to make everything work was, as every opportunity you can go off duty as quick as you can and as often as you can. And do not go to your company and ask them if this is okay. If they don't call you and chastise you, or however they do it, and say, hey, Michael, you're messing up on your logs, let them tell you what you're doing wrong. And until then, do what works for you. And I never had a problem with that. Nobody ever said nothing. But I knew that I was taking that on my own, and my company at that time, that is what they wanted you to do. They wanted you to be your own driver and do it the way that made you most efficient, and that was what worked for me. So, as always, there's a little deal come up right up here somewhere where you press the thing. I'm going to try to put it right there. If you could subscribe, like the video, and comment, ask questions, send my email, dashingtrucks@gmail.com. I may or may not write that in the thing, but it's the same. My email is the same as my channel. So I hope to hear from you. All right. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.